Okay, so first thing I wanted to say is yes, they are always little, but I know what you're going through. My son was 4, and one thing I remember, I'll never forget, and I use this example a lot, so I apologize if you've heard it or everybody else has heard it a billion times, but my friend, I was over at her house, and this was after I had already gotten my hair keeps falling in my face, and I was looking for a clip.
It looks great.
Yeah, oh my gosh. We were over at my friend's house, and her daughter and my son are the same age, and they were playing, they were bouncing around, and she goes, a typical 6-year-old girl. And of course, the first thing that you do is think of your child at that age. And I couldn't remember what my daughter was doing at 6. Like, I could not picture it. And that was the first time it hit me like a punch, man. I started just sobbing, and I was like, I remember, because I didn't have her at that age. So I can't remember what her little quirks were or her little dance moves. And when you say your boy at 4, that's how old my son was. And things like their faces change so much at that age. I mean, I swear they can go to bed and wake up and they look different. And so, Mommy, I'm so sorry. I'm just sorry, because I know what you're going through. And then to touch on the judgment part, I had no idea, because it was completely done unconsciously, that I was a judger. And when this happened to me and everybody said exactly what you just said, well, CPS doesn't just take your kids for no reason. You had to have done something. I had one friend, he's been my friend since I think I was 17 years old. And I will never forget, he brought me out to breakfast, and he goes, you can tell me anything. And I was like, I know. And he goes, so just tell me what happened. Like, why did they take your kids? And I was like, I just sat there completely devastated that I was being asked this. And he goes, we all lose it as parents sometimes. And, I would never judge you. So whatever happened, just tell me and I can help you figure out a way to work through it. And I was just like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, that's what's really
anything.
Hard. Yeah.
So my first question that I want to ask you, I'm sorry that I'm reaching, but was CPS ever involved in your life prior to them being in your life as an adult with a child? Like, did you experience them when you were a child?
I did have a family member have an issue with one of my parents, and in a vindictive way, they sent CPS out to interview my sister and myself. And I knew it was BS. I knew who did it. I was probably like 16 or 17 at the time. I was very rude to the caseworker. I said, look, I know why you're here. I know who sent you. You need to go help kids that are actually being abused and neglected, because we're not. Like, I was so offended that a family member would do this to her own family. Like, people will call over nothing. Like, and I've had, jerk neighbors do this since my son was born. And the paperwork says that I dropped him before we even left the hospital because he was a 3-pound preemie in the NICU. And then in another report, because like I said, I do social media, haters will come up with anything just because they love to see people go down. They actually get a rise out of it. There were reports about my child before he was even born, before I was even pregnant. And I'm like, where's the validity here? What is this? This is ridiculous. And anytime I was ever accused of anything, I said, look, I know who sent you. I can show you, something counter. I can show you an individual who stole my vehicle and changed the title when I was in the hospital giving birth. and I know this person called, you know, and like, I mean, I understand they have to investigate every claim, but I wish the people who would show up could be a little bit more discerning, could be trained in things like revenge, you know, tactics, narcissistic
Absolutely.
personality disorder, cluster B. They're like, people have made, who can make major decisions about you, your child's life, are so uneducated about a lot of factors that tend to be more common than not. And then not only that, you don't know your rights as a parent. Most people don't realize till it's too late. You don't have to let them in the door. I at least learned to not sign anything, but that hasn't helped me much. I was just concerned, okay, if I sign a case plan, even though I've completed what's been required of me, I'm like, oh, am I locking him in the system with a deadline to complete certain things? And now we have COVID. I'm like, I'm not signing that, but I'll do everything you ask.
Yep. Yep. Man, you have some amazing points. I am curious, what do you do for the social media stuff? And how long have you been doing it?
I've been doing live streaming and content creation stuff for over 10 years. And it'll be like pop culture references. It'll be like games, certain community, like inside stories, like so. There's usually like a network I'm part of, whether it's an actual platform, app, or a group of individuals. Like the people who've hardcore been doing it for a long time, it's kind of like a small circle.
Yeah.
So we'll team. And you know, some of it's a little out there, but I still stand firm. Like when I'm being completely like satire and comedy, like it does not reflect me as a person. And if someone is unable to pick up on that, I feel like that's on them. But since my child has been in the system, there have been like a ton of things I've just, you know, hidden or whatever, because I'm like, oh great, this is totally going to be taken out of context. Because when people will troll me, I will just own up, or not own up, but I will just own the troll and take it to a whole other level, and then it completely ruins the trolls. Like damn it, it's not offending her, this isn't working. And people will take me being sarcastic as an act, as like a real thing. So I'm like, okay guys, I'm now teaching sarcasm theory. You know. But I mean, I'm not like throwing cats or abusing children in the video. I'm not neglecting children. You'll see when I did have my son, like if, you know, he happened to need me, I'd be like, all right guys, we're shutting this down. Kid needs me, you know, or I would do stuff when he was asleep. Like he's always came first. So no matter how someone wants to edit, take something out of context, I still kind of stand by you know, what I've done. I don't think I've done anything absolutely horrible.
Well, I can hear just in, again, I have a pretty good view on people in my judgment of character. I'm pretty tired. It's late in the day, so my words sound very jumbled right now, I feel like. But you sound very put together, very organized, very structured. It doesn't sound like you're all over the place where you're leaving your kid, you know, off in the corner and focusing on something else. So.
Oh, I can't. He is so fast.
Yeah.
He slept for a whole year because he was a preemie, and I guess he needed to catch up or whatever. But once he hit one, there was
everywhere.
Was run and go. And so there is no like turnaround for 2 seconds. I'm sure you know, you have to.
Yep. All right, well, let's get down to it. You said it's been a little over a year. So let's go to day one. First of all, is Dad in the picture or no? Okay. How long?
And not by alienation, by like literally he didn't want anything to do with the child. I do send his grandmother from the dad's side and siblings photos of him, updates. I don't receive child support, and I'm not going to force someone to be a parent that doesn't want to be. You know, should the day come where, you know, he wants to, of course I'll be reasonable in that fact. And I don't want to be like knocking people, but there's definitely a good reason that I'm doing this solo. But yeah, so there's no like, you know, help me out, buy me out. Like that's kind of really not an option for me. So somehow just trying to keep going and, you know, Yeah.
So how did CPS get involved? What happened?
Okay, so there was another streamer ex of mine who, prior to my child's actual removal, was upset about our breakup. He brought the whole thing online. He for a minute he was pretty known, and he used like gang stalking tactics, and he would get people in the hundreds to flood the call centers making false accusations. CPS workers would show up, they would not find anything that was accused in the house or in the surroundings, so they'd make their report and leave.
What were the accusations?
Oh, that I was on stream blowing drugs in my child's face, like just the most horrible things you could imagine. That I was beating him, just completely outrageous, like hysterical, like just anything they could think of. I even have text message saying, "Oh, we're gonna do everything we can till your son is gone. You effed up." Like, and I have all this proof, and I would show this to the caseworkers when they showed up. So fast forward to March 2018, I want to say it was the 16th. We're shopping at the 99-cent store for like St. Patrick's Day crap and other groceries.
Who's
and
we?
I'm pushing him. Huh?
Who's we?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just my son and myself.
Okay.
He's properly strapped in the cart. The cart is pretty much to the brim full. We're turning to get into an aisle to pay, or a line to pay, and the whole car, the wheel breaks and it just tips over and he's stuck in it. And I'm like, oh my God. So like, no one's helping me, by the way. They're completely understaffed. I pick him up and he's like screaming. I notice he's got bruising around his hips. He loses a tooth, and I had just replaced a crown, and I'm like, F this, man. And so I'm like, I'm going to make an incident report, because I figured, well, I don't want them to accuse me of anything. Because I've heard horror stories like that. And I also, you know, if there's serious bones broken or anything, like these people are going to pay for it. So I wait around for about a half hour, get an incident report, and then go straight to the emergency room. I also had photos. I didn't have video of, and the 99-cent store actually refused to release that to me or officers. Like they didn't do it, but I still had, you know, I could tell you it was aisle 4, and like 3 cameras caught the angle. And then I have photos of the aftermath and everything, and photo of like the wheel being broken. I showed this to the, I'm sorry.
They refused to give you what? Like a copy of
the surveillance footage. Like I had what I took on my phone and an incident report, but they would, after the fact, like, okay, so when we show up to the ER, we were taken to a room where they usually keep like inmates. And there was people watching at all times, like 3 nurses outside the room. They didn't treat my son. We were held hostage for nearly 24 hours before a worker came, intimidated me, and removed him. I had my family try to come and like explain and help me out, like, you know, kind of back me up as the kind of person I am. I had a friend who was studying law at the time. They refused to let anyone come back and intervene or do anything. And yeah, it was just absolute hell. I tried to, and of course they forced a drug test. I tried to go, I had a UTI at the time, and I'm like, well, can you take blood instead? And they wrote that up as a fail. They came to my house the following day, and I was able to go. Like I had you know, cranberry water. I even drank a ton of water at the hospital, but when you have a UTI, you can't go. You have to have a certain amount of urine in there for it to test. And I'm like, come in here, watch me, dude. So they keep him, he goes through 9 foster homes total, 8 in the first month. And where he's currently at now, he's been the whole time, but they had him in 8 different places within a month. And he is so traumatized. He like how you were saying, like their face changes. I can tell he's a different person. At one point he asks me something like, oh, if we go to heaven, then can we be together? I'm like, really? My kid thinks we have to be dead to be together?
My son, that is crazy that you said that. My son said the exact same thing.
Yeah. Every court I came, you know, prepared. I learned as much as I could about juvenile dependency. I even learned about the type of objections I could call, and then I was told, oh, you can't do that. You're not an attorney. And I'm like, really? I had a list that I wanted my attorney to do, and, you know, I wanted trial from day one. I said, take me to trial. I will shut this shit down. And I don't know why I was not granted trial.
Let's go back. Let's slow it down and break it down a little bit and go back to the beginning. So when you went to the hospital, did you go via yourself, or did you call 911 and the ambulance took you, or how was that?
So here's the thing. When I decided to make an incident report, I wasn't necessarily like, ooh, I'm so happy. I'm gonna make something out of this. No, I just couldn't tell by how small he was and how much he was screaming if there was serious injuries or not.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, I'm going to make an incident report regardless. I did that as quickly as possible, and then I just drove us by myself.
Okay. I didn't know.
So there was no other witnesses to, you know, corroborate my story other than photos and an incident report.
Okay. And when you made the incident report, did you say that police were there at the...
Yeah.
No. Okay. So
police never got involved until CPS came. And at that time I'm saying, hey, look at what I have. I want you to go to the you know, my taxes, pay your salary. I want you to go to the effing 99-cent store. You're not going anywhere with my kid.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're threatened in that kind of way, you're going to, you know, I don't know, I'm sure you were, the whole mama bear thing. And then they use that against you too. And they're like, oh, you're mentally unstable. They had me do several psych evaluations because one woman who, by the way, never was involved with the case, just, I guess she's a superior type. She's like, oh no, make her take it again. Make her take it again. There's got to be something wrong. Of course, I probably toned it down my PTSD stuff. But other than that, and there's one called the Milton multi-axle. You cannot cheat that.
Yep.
You cannot cheat that.
I did
one.
that
so
too.
I'm like, all right, bitch, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yep.
Next, what else are you going to use against me? So, yeah.
I did that one too. How many hours did it take you?
I want to say each time I took it, it took like about 45 minutes because the way the questions are written, they're written really weird and it's done that way on purpose. And I didn't want to select something that was untrue or, you know what I mean? I made sure I really understood the way they phrased the questions.
I wonder which one mine was because I did that one too, but mine it was like...
And then probably the ACEs, the adverse childhood events.
I know it was like 2,500 questions and it took
that
like...
would have been the multi-axle.
Took like 5 hours though.
Yeah, oh wow.
Yeah, where it's multiple choice and stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Same one, you just took the extremely long version.
Yeah, it was long. It took forever because they offered me to do it in a couple days and I was like, no, because they said that if you choose to break it up like that, there could be negative consequences on you for choosing to do it that way.
That's BS.
Yeah, so I was like, fine, I'll do it all in one day because they were saying, give me a minute, let me try to remember what they said why, but okay, so you drive to the emergency room. When you first got there, you said that they put you in a room that normally would hold like inmates and stuff. Now, were they just super busy or?
No. It seemed like from the beginning that there was a plan to possibly remove them.
So and an assumption.
I don't want
child abuse.
I don't want to full on blow the lid here, but I've done some investigating myself, and I'll bet my life on it that hospital is a pipeline.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
To take children from single mothers, lower income. I wish to God I would have gone to the nicer hospital, but I went to the closest one. I thought as a mom I was doing the right thing. I want to make sure my kid's doesn't have any broken bones or any injuries that I need to be careful of. Because I changed his pull-up once or whatever before we made it there. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad I got that report because, you know, I don't want to hurt him. Like I think when you're older, like you can tell like if something's broke, but when they're little and their bones are like kind of quiet, like I didn't know. And I'm like, I'm not going to risk this and have him hurt himself. I'm like, I just want to get this checked out. Biggest mistake I've ever made.
Right.
Thinking I was doing the right thing like that, you know, I'll never now I'm going to be terrified to take him to the emergency room without like 3 witnesses, you know?
Today.
Just like record my whole life. Truman Show.
True, because even today I had to take my son to the dentist. I don't know if I told you. And
yeah, you were saying abscess going on or something, infection.
Yeah. And the dentist was asking me questions like, well, when was the last time you took him to the dentist? And I was like, well, he went for his checkup like before school and stuff. Well, what about the doctors, the regular doctors? And it was causing me so much anxiety the way that she was asking me questions. And then
what are you supposed to do with lockdown, by the way?
What do you mean? Say it again.
Oh, I'm saying with lockdown, I feel like everyone gets a pass this year.
Yeah, it's
Because
just,
I'm sure you would have tried, but unless it was life or death, a lot of times they won't even take you.
well, no dentist is open right now to see normal
Oh, yeah.
clients unless it is an emergency. So even though it was an emergency, it was like the fourth one I called that would see him. And even then, like I was telling her, okay, so then she brings up medication. She goes, well, I'd like to prescribe him. And she said the antibiotic. And I said, well, let me explain why I'm a little bit nervous to give him this antibiotic, because I am anaphylactically allergic to that medication. And my daughter, the first time she tried it, she was allergic to it. And I said,
yeah, that's the last thing you need.
I'm a little hesitant on giving that. And the way that she phrased it, she goes, so knowing that your son would benefit from having that medication, you're unwilling to give it to him. I said, that's not what I said.
No, you got 2 for 2 genetic markings that it may not work out for him. What a bee. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
And I was just like, I have no problem trying it. I'm just telling you why I'm hesitant on trying this antibiotic. So I don't know if it has anything to do with genetics or what, but if my son could possibly have a possibility to become allergic to this, yeah, I'd like to prevent that with all, with everything. And it was just like, it was really weird, and it made, it just made me very anxious. And then my poor son was sitting in the chair crying, and she goes, well, are you hurting? He goes, not right now. She goes, well, then don't cry for no reason, because then I don't know if you're in pain or not. And I was like, hey, I'm coming in.
Oh my God. Wow.
Because you're not allowed to go back there unless you're the patient, and because of COVID. And I was like, okay, I'm coming in. And I went back there. So I get where you're coming from with everything.
Yeah, that is some nerve. And that's, I would have been infuriated.
Yeah, I was. There's something in my eye. Okay, so you're in the hospital and you got all these people watching you. Of course, you don't even think twice about it.
They don't even treat them, by the way. No scans, nothing. I'm just waiting like, what the heck? There's something wrong. And, I'll go out to the hall to get like a drink or something like that. Just kind of look around, see what's going on. And like, there's plenty of other patients in and out. And I'm like, we're just not getting treated. What is up with that? And he's a very picky eater. When they brought us breakfast, he was throwing the food, he was opening the milk, and he was just pouring it. So I take one milk, I put it in his sippy, put the other one away, try to feed him again. He doesn't want it. So I start eating. And what do they say? Oh, she was starving him and refusing fluids.
Okay, hold on a second.
That's what the nurse tells the caseworker.
Breakfast. What time did you go in there?
Let's see. We went in there, I want to say like 7 p.m., between 7 or 8 p.m. And when breakfast comes along, we still haven't seen CPS workers, by the way. We're still waiting to be treated.
They didn't do anything? They didn't do...
No, they did not treat. Not under my watch. He was not treated.
But, so when they brought him in, did they do it like a physical, like, or look at, okay. I mean, what did they do?
Yeah, so what I presume happened is the ER doctor like physically looked at it, but there was no other further examination as far as scanning or, like even checking like reflexes, none of that. He just kind of looked at it.
Look at what?
Acted a little funny.
What was the plate? Where was the bruises? Where was the place?
Oh, so I sent the photos, but I understand if you can't pull them up. Basically, there was one on his butt that had the lines like a shopping cart. There was a couple on his knee. It was just all hip and knee area and then missing a tooth. Very consistent with my claims. And it makes sense. If he's strapped in, if there's a seatbelt holding him, and then he falls down with God knows how many pounds, and you know what I mean? Like, it added up. And yeah. I feel like if you're abusing your child, why are you going to take him to the ER to get caught?
A lot of people do, believe it or not.
I know kids would be covering it up. They'd be hiding. They'd be starving to death. They wouldn't, oh, let's go get caught. No, they don't do that. I think you take your kid to the emergency room because you give a shit. Excuse me.
You are correct, but I was telling you I used to be an LVN, and a lot of parents will bring their kids in to make it look like they do care.
Okay.
Just, and most of the time it's because somebody has made a statement, like maybe a teacher.
And they want to cover their ass. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that I can understand, but I mean, I had pictures, and those were fresh injuries.
Right,
and,
of course.
And, he's getting like, after several hours, he's bored. He wants to get out, and they're interpreting that as, oh, the child's scared of her. No, he was just bored. He doesn't want to be in that hospital room.
How old is he again?
At the time of the incident, he was 3.
He's 3. No.
Exactly.
3-year-old wants to be stuck in a room, probably no TV in there.
Oh, of course not. It's the inmate room.
Yeah, like, what is he supposed to be doing? What's he supposed to be doing?
Exactly.
You can't put him on the ground because it's disgusting.
Right.
I'm not sure if they had a child bed or just a regular gurney.
No, he was in a regular gurney, like a mobile one too. It was not like, a gurney. It's, it moved.
Yeah, and I'm sure you didn't have anything but a chair,
right.
uncomfortable to sit in. I'm sure nobody got any sleep. So
no, I'm pushing him, circling the tiny room in his stroller till he eventually crashed out. And then, we woke up to eat, and then, CPS shows up a few hours later.
Now, you mentioned you made a statement, so I don't know what you meant by this, but you had said while you were there, they didn't do anything. So did you leave for a period of time?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
So what I mean is, when I took him to the emergency room, just because of the nature of the bruising and how much he was screaming, like when I wanted to change his pull-up and stuff, I'm thinking, okay, if something's broken, I need to know. Because I can't, what am I going to do? Wrap it? So I had wanted some type of scan, x-ray. Yeah. And while what I feel, we were held hostage under my watch while we were being held there in an inmate section area. They did not, other than the one ER doctor coming and looking in less than 5 minutes, he was not treated whatsoever. Under my watch, there were no scans, there was no x-rays, nothing. I'm like, what the hell are we waiting for? And then a little after breakfast, I'm notified, oh, do you want CPS to come? I'm like, for what?
Yeah, why?
Oh, well, we need them to come. I'm like, I'd rather not, but can we get a scan? Can we get something going on? If you want them to come, I'm going to need them to go to the 99-cent store first. Right. And you're going to show them what I have here. And, pretty much any questions I had was just, any questions I had, they more or less were ambiguous about the answers. So they would say, I don't know, things like that. So very, very unhelpful and very peculiar, odd behavior, I thought, because I guess they didn't want me to spook and run off. Like, I wasn't going to run off. I needed my son to get an x-ray at least. Like, what did I come here for? Like, I could freaking look at him and look at the bruising myself. That doesn't tell me if anything's broken or not.
Right. Okay. So I am Cynthia, and I'm the host of the reality series, CPS the Horror Stories. I am in the state of California. I'm in Southern California. And I've had an open CPS case myself. It ended in 2018, so it's been closed for 2 years. Does not change the fear and everything else inside of my body. Every time I hear a knock or anything on the door, or just anything. So,
PTSD.
Yes. Yes.
We have a come back with a warrant doormat.
I want one. You have all this neat stuff. So, Tracy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Tracy, and my son has been in the system for over a year now. I'm also in California.
And tell me what you do for work and anything else about you and him.
So I do live streaming and multimedia influencer type stuff. My son is 4 now. We celebrated a birthday in a visitation, both our birthdays actually. And it's pretty rough. Well, actually, you miss out on all the holidays. I actually can't stand holidays anymore, because whether you're shopping for supplies, party supplies, or even going out, even holidays I don't really care for, that are like more, I think, about kids and their experience, I can't stand them. I just have to sleep through them and pretend they don't exist. If they happen to fall on or close to a visitation, then, we would do our own little celebration that way. But, when your kids are in the system, no matter how long they're in the system, you miss a lot. And when they're little, and they always seem little to you, I guess, but, like, it's like they take time from you that you can't get back. And I think I think the hardest part is wondering how the experience is for them, because I'm an adult. I understand the BS and how it's wrong, and but they don't. They just are like, why did this person take me? So it's quite the mind up. And not even that, or not only that, but then you have the social stigma, the what people just assume, you must be a monster if your child is removed. The average person does not understand that this could happen to you too. So I decided to do this in particular because I kind of I want other parents to not feel alone, and I want people to realize how normal, or it shouldn't be normal, but how common this kind of thing is, and to not think that it couldn't be you, because I certainly didn't think it would ever happen to me. And to not judge, because your kid can end up in the system on completely fabricated assumptions, accusations, and then if where you go to court, it runs anything like a kangaroo court, you can't even defend yourself. And then all the specialty attorneys who specialize in juvenile dependency, it's a little more niche than family law. They want at least 20,000 retainer. It's like, yeah, I have that laying around. So if you're a single mom or lower income, you're screwed.
I'm so excited to interview you just based off of this little thing that you just said, your introduction, because everything you just said is something I 100% stand by. So morning comes, breakfast comes, the whole incident, how dare you eat his food or look at his food.
The food that was being thrown on the floor that he would not eat, by the way.
So he's not looking at it. You touch it or look at it and get accused of starving him.
Yes.
When does CPS come in the door?
I want to say, honestly, that day is just such a blur, but I want to say between maybe noon and 1.
Oh my gosh. So still no test. Still nothing going on. They're not telling you anything. They haven't admitted you. Just out of curiosity, did the bruises and all that stuff get worse? Is he crying? Is he favoring any of his owies? I mean, is anything happening?
He seems okay, but he seems like cooped up, like as if he were in a playpen forever. Like, I got to get out. I'm bored. And I have narcolepsy. I have medication for that. But there was one incident in which I asked a nurse to watch him. I understand they're not babysitters, but they're not going to let me take him to my car. I keep my medications locked up in my car so nothing happens. I don't want it to be mistaken for candy. I go to take my my medication, and then of course, like, oh, she was acting strange. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to not fall asleep, and y'all are stressing me out.
Just so people understand, will you explain what that? I know what it is, but will you define that for people listening?
Sure. So there's 2 types of narcolepsy. I have type 2. And basically my brain, there's something called cretin. I don't make like any of it. I go to into REM sleep almost immediately. And of the 4 phases of sleep, the 4th one that your brain goes, hey, let's make energy. Yeah, I don't do that. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not medicated, I'm like a zombie, and I'm on the verge of falling asleep. If I can fall asleep standing off my medication. Yeah. So after, making sure he doesn't run out of the door, which you can't lock, by the way, I was like, I got to take my meds. And that was held against me. I signed a release so they could talk to my doctor. And I showed them my scripts, but everything just was used against me.
Hold on, we'll get to that in a second. So when you went outside, instead of taking him, you asked a nurse to watch him?
Yeah, well, because I was like, they're not treating him, and
Yeah.
I'm holding him. I'm like, look, I have to get medication out of my car. Why? Well, I'm gonna fall asleep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're not considered. I'm like, I understand, but because I tried to just sneak out with him, not to leave, but to get my meds.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. Security came, and it was a big ordeal. So I'm like, okay, this is what needs to happen. Like, I'm like, if I fall asleep, he's gonna run amok, and he could pull the plug on some terminal person. My luck, okay. So this, I don't know what you want me to do. If you want to escort me to my car, or if you want to watch him, I have to get my medication.
Well,
and
that right there is, to me, if you were hiding something, you wouldn't have done that. I mean, there's so much right there just in that incident that I feel is a pro for you, because you left him. So obviously you're not hiding anything, because, I mean, he's 3, right? So he can't talk. You know, you're not hiding anything because you're asking to go to your car. You're having them watch him, which if you're there all by yourself, I don't think is a negative thing whatsoever, especially if they're not letting you leave with the kid.
Right. Like, I feel like I'm like, we have one of two options. And I'm like, option number 1, I fall asleep. This is going to be bad for everybody. I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want him to do things to, you know, I mean, my kid is very curious and just typical boy, you know, let's destroy this.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm like, yeah, I got to take something. And, you know, of course that's twisted into a very colorful version, which again, it's like, you know, the game Telephone. Each person involved that, you know, they tell a case for it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And some things were just completely fabricated.
So you go out, just out of curiosity, how long does it take you from?
It takes about 5 to 7 minutes, because when I went back in, I guess I was flagged and I had to explain to security who I was and to let me in.
Oh, see, I was thinking it would take you like 20 minutes. At the hospital we go to, the parking lot is literally like a mile away.
Wow. I ran because I'm like, I felt bad. I'm like, maybe they're understaffed. I know they're not babysitters. So I went as quickly as I could. I was parked fairly close. But yeah, I went as quickly as I could. And I was more time trying to explain to them, hey, I'm allowed back there. And by this time, they had already decided nobody's allowed back here that can back up her story, that can help her out. And I'm like, no, I'm the mother. You're going to let me back.
Yeah.
So they were already, I feel like from the beginning, they were plotting.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, so you come back, you take your medicine. This was at night, obviously, right? This is before breakfast.
No, this was, I want to say after breakfast.
Oh, okay. Okay, so after breakfast.
I was completely just trying my best off my meds for quite a while. And because like I just wanted to get in and out of there, you know. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And when it got to the point where, okay, I'm gonna fall asleep standing up, I had to do that. And then CPS comes a couple hours after the fact.
Wow. Okay. So now let's talk about when CPS comes. What happens? How many social workers are there? Are there officers with them? Do they have paperwork? What happens?
They have clipboards. There's 2 of them. I believe officers were around, but they hadn't quite entered the room for their whole intimidation stuff. I basically give them the rundown of what happened. I show them evidence, and, you know, they're like, can we talk to your child? And I'm like, alone? And I'm like, no. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, he's 3. Now, I don't say this out loud, but I'll tell you a joke between me and you. Like, we'll play around, you know, we'll bop each other with empty 2-liters. It's a game we play. And he'll go, you broke my back. You know what I mean? With like, it's not, you know, like with my luck, he will say, mommy broke my back, you know, when he's, it's a joke. So I'm like, hell no, you're not going to talk to my child alone. I don't know what kind of stuff you're going to ask him, so I don't have time to train him if you're going to run that bullshit. But I'm like, absolutely not. He's 3. You could literally coerce anything. So I'm like, no way. And then, you know, then they're like, okay, what else can we do? All right, well, we need you to pee. I'm like, okay, let me give it a go. I can't go. I have a UTI. And I'm like, let me drink water. They're watching me drink all this freaking water. They're watching me take all this cranberry, and I'm not going. I'm like, come to the bathroom with me. Watch me, like, try to freaking go. I can't. And they're like, okay, well, that's considered a fail. So
you offered to do your blood
test. I said, take a blood test. And they said, no, we don't do it that way. And I'm like, why not? I'm like, can't you do a more sophisticated panel that way? Wouldn't things be in my system longer that way?
You can't.
And they're like, oh, well, why are you so nervous? And I'm like, because my son got hurt. He's not being treated. And this is happening. I'm like, I'm human. Okay. I don't know how I'm supposed to act in this situation, but this is insane. You know, and then I'm calling family. I'm like, yo, you got to get here. I need you to help me out. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I'm in a trap, and I need you guys to just back me up on this. If you can stop by the 99-cent store and freaking, I don't know what you got to do to get that security tape, but they're not buying the photos. They're not reading the incident report. I'm scared. Please help. My parents eventually come. They're not allowed back there. A friend who's studying law, she's not allowed back there. And it's just, let's just terrorize you for a couple hours, and then they eventually take them. And of course I freak out. I'm like, you know, hysterical. And they're like, do we need to admit you? And I'm like, fuck you, bitch. Do you need to admit me? Yeah, of course. Yeah, we took your child and now we're going to say you're crazy. I'm like, fuck you. You know, so like my ex came and picked, it was God, worst day of my life. But you know, it's like anything you do or say or whatever, like it can be used against you, you know? So the whole, what is it? The plead the fifth?
Yeah.
That can be exercised, but you feel like, okay, well, I don't have anything to hide, so let me just tell the story. Not knowing that that story can be twisted to whatever agenda that they have.
That's exactly it.
I also found a training manual for the county, and they're seeking 0 to 4. They have a target goal of 0 to, you know, we need to get this many kids 0 to 4 so we can get this much money. And I'm like, that's disgusting. You know, I know they'll take kids of all ages, but well, like specifically, I know that was being out, I guess, more adoptable or whatever the hell, whatever. But I start off the manual. You
also said that your child was a preemie. So did he have any health issues?
Surprisingly, no. He does take after me in like a lanky, like slightly underweight way. And, you know, doctors my whole life were telling my mom, oh, why are you starving her? But it's the body type, you know, so right. they were trying to say he was too thin when, I mean, he wasn't, you know, but it's just ignorance, you know, people not realizing we can come in all shapes and sizes and, you know, different body types, body fats. And they're like, oh, anything that could be twisted and make me look like I was neglecting him, abusing him, whatever, they ran with it, you know?
So, okay, they take him that day. Where does he go? Does he go to a family member, or he does?
No, kinship was not offered to us. It was not offered at all. I find out at not the deposition, the jurisdiction, which is the second hearing, that one of my family members in Oklahoma offered to take him, but they didn't make big efforts as far as, you know, contacting everybody locally and, you know, making sure they had the right contact information. And if worse came to worse, I would have said, hey, send him to my half sister, but then I wouldn't be able to see him at all. He was in 8 foster homes within the first month. And the first place they sent him.
Why didn't he go to your mom?
Okay, so my dad was very angry at the situation, and he meant well, but he said something along the lines of, well, you know, my daddy used to beat me and I turned out just fine. And, you know, I've gotten arguments over it with her that she needs to set him straight, and she has never laid a hand on that boy. My dad was trying to say she would never hurt him, but he had like the worst way of saying it. And so that was totally twisted. Their home was approved for living. I had my own place, but it was approved for living anyway. And, you know, that they just threw that right out the window. And I'm like, look, my dad, whatever. My dad would not be watching him because my dad's too old. My dad's like in his 70s. Okay. He's like a crazy old man. Just let him be an old grumpy man. Me and my mother would be taking care of him, you know, but I think, like I said, when I found that training stuff, and I can't really discuss how I got a hold of that, but that 0 to 4 demographic that they really want, and they're offering bonuses to their caseworkers for, he was in that range. So making it appear that no one in my family, no friends were fit to care for him would push that agenda to, you know, potentially get him on the adoption table. And the first few families, I had to dig, but I found out, you know, he was going to foster to adopt families initially. And he was just so, the way they described his behavior, he's never been that way. And I can imagine how angry, how terrified he must have been. You know, 8 foster homes in a month.
So let's go.
And he's only known me his whole freaking life.
Right. Let's go to the first foster home. What happens? Actually, before you go to that, when was your first court hearing?
Okay, so my first, um, it was not, okay, it's supposed to be, from what I understand, within 10 days. It
Yeah.
was way after the fact. And I know like St. Patrick's Day is a holiday, but it's not a day off holiday.
Right.
So that right there, the exact date, I do not know off the top of my head. I want to say it was like closer to 14 days after the fact.
Oh, okay. So in that time, in that 14 days, did you get to see him or talk to him?
Oh, no, not at all. There was no visitation set up until, I want to say, after the deposition, which are the very first hearing. They did not allow me to speak at all. They asked me very slighted questions in which, like, yes or no, there was more
Right.
to it, so they could push their agenda with
Right.
what they wanted to convince the judge of. And then I sent a video. I have like a special Twitter dedicated to him and other families going through this and kids who have aged out of the system.
Yeah.
And there's a video where he's just screaming, terrified, because he has to go back with them. And that was one of the first visits after the fact. And that behavior, I want to say for about 8 months, was very typical. And just now he's just starting to, well, I haven't seen him in about 3 because of COVID. But before that, he was just kind of starting to like, well, this is my life now. He'd get anxious when the workers would come in and say, give us the 5-10 minute warning. He would just get so anxious because he knew, okay, the visit's going to be done now. Before COVID happened, I was supposed to have in and outs and overnights going into effect. Like I had a court date. I guess it was the 6-month review, which was way after 6 months. But they're like, okay, let's implement those. And then COVID happens and nothing. I had to push like crazy to get something. And then Zoom became regular, but it was a good month or so. We had some other app that was just really glitchy. And, so we get Zoom going and, I would have to come up with fun things to do because it's a screen. It's not me in person. Sometimes he'd be angry at me like, you only live in the phone now. Or the foster mom has him watching TV or a tablet and doesn't realize like, hey,
Yeah,
not
mommy's
cool.
there. Right.
Yeah, so I would have to do all this like crazy stuff to get his attention. But at the same time, like he's 4 now, so I'm not going to be upset or take it personally. I can't compete with SpongeBob, dude. He's running 20 seasons.
Wow.
Yeah, so I would like, we'd paint, like we do all kinds of fun stuff in the visits. And now I guess they're starting to allow in-person again. But since mine are in and out or overnights, it's like complicated scheduling it. So I'm now just partaking in his therapy sessions, which are way longer than my visits were. And we're just kind of combining the two.
So let's talk about the first house, because I heard you have something to say about that. What happened at the first house?
Oh, okay. So, and this is, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I'll give you the gist of it. So if I recall correctly, it was in King City, and that's a good hour north of me. So it's like really far. I also read note that he was in a kinship center, like just an office for like a good 72 hours, I believe. And then he goes to the first family, and I guess they had a smaller child, and he was screaming, he was attacking, he was biting, he was punching, he was just like, let me get the F out of here, like just very, very violent. Like more than the just, mad, I didn't get my way, let me hit you, which we'd phased out the hitting and biting, but some little kids do. This was like, I'm going to fight for my life. Yeah. And that family like had him, if I'm recalling correctly, like less than a 24 to 48 hour period. I don't have details on all the other families, but I do remember that count number because when I didn't know this until the jurisdictional hearing, and they're supposed to give you their reports 14 days prior to court. Oh no, I get it 5 minutes. And things like damn near 200 effing pages.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what the F? And then he gets settled with the foster family, which he's still currently with. And there's a language barrier. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. No problem. I'm like, at least teach him Spanish so he's bilingual. But I'm like, what are we going to do if we're having issues communication-wise? And believe it or not, the foster worker for the foster family's caseworker, way on top of it. I could call her, text her any time or day. Like we have a very good rapport, and she knows everything about the case at any given time. she's great. And she's
That's
able to
awesome.
kind of relay things. Yeah, so I'm lucky in that way. But it took me a while to figure out who's who, what's what, you know? And my reunification worker, who's like in charge of everything, who oversees everything, I could barely get the time of day with him, you know? And we're pretty far into the process before, you know, I'd like break down, yo, do you, I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. Most of the people, other than the foster or the caseworkers or caseworker for the foster family, has no idea how the case started, the details of the case. It is absolutely shocking that people involved with making major decisions of my son's life don't know the case. I'm like, are you serious? I'm not rude, but I'm just like surprised. I'm like, yeah, well, let me just give you a quick rundown. This is why we're here. Here's all my drug tests.
How many social workers have been on your case?
Okay, so at all the meetings that we've had, I have allowed them to train people. So, and then there's note takers. I want to say like more than 10, less than 15, between 10 and 15 people. Oh, and then the visitation centers, most of the supervisors are great. There was one girl that was just a freaking nightmare. It's like, I don't know if she hates children or she's barren or jaded or what the hell, but I had to get rid of her real quick because she was just, just every little thing she came in to interrupt, and she would, you know, blow things out of proportion, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She ruined his birthday. We're blowing out a cake, and, you know, she goes, I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade. I'm like, bitch, you just did. But we can't have candles or fire. You need to shut that out. And then your mom, she can't be here either. I'm like, are you serious? Because the reunification worker just permitted this. Like, nobody talks to anybody within the case. And, you know, they would like kick out grandma and shut down the cake for his birthday. Are you kidding me? So she lasted about a month or two, and I got rid of her. And everyone else who oversaw us they were good. Or honest, I should say.
So you said how many social workers, though, specifically social workers?
I want to say at least 10, less than 15.
Wow, that's a lot.
And this is much smaller than LA County. You know, this is Monterey County.
But different ones, so.
Yes. Note takers, supervisors, understudies. I mean, I don't know the title of all the positions. CASA workers.
No, I mean like just your social worker, like the one who's watching.
Okay. So I pretty much had the reunification worker from the beginning. My biggest problems have been CPS's counsel and the gal. The Galamet Leadham doesn't know shit, doesn't talk to the child, doesn't see the child. And then the counsel for the county, you know, let's just keep this, you know, milk this cow. So that's been my biggest hindrance, because, you know, there's a lot of, you know, different versions of the story. And then, you know, I'm objected, sustained. I'm not allowed to say, hey, well, you can say this all day long, but how about we look at irrefutable proof?
Right.
Oh, we take hearsay here. Okay, my bad. Carry on. So,
now,
you know.
Yeah. Now, your visits, because you had brought up that they're going to be overnights and stuff. Up until that point, had they still been supervised?
Yes. So we had my last court date, which off the top, okay, it was like a week before California was total lockdown. So whenever that started, I want to say March or late February or something.
Yeah. Oh, your camera.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, sorry. Someone was trying to call me.
It's okay.
Yeah, so at that court date, I was granted for the unsupervised to be implemented. They were checking out driver's license, anyone that would be driving us, places we might go. And then we hear, okay, now we're in lockdown. And then prior to that, the visits were twice a week for 3 hours. So I saw him for a total of 6 hours.
And where were your visitations at?
There was 2 different centers, and they were in town. They were about a mile apart from each other. One facility was very like cold and clinical. And then the second facility was a little bit more homey. And, you know, like I would just bring whatever activities, games. The second facility, which was phased in later on, oh, it was so funny. One of the supervisors, my son was just working her. He would get extra snacks and juice. Like he's
cute.
a charmer, so I'm gonna have to watch out for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like aside from the one like awful supervisor, everyone else was really cool. You know, they'd pull me aside and go, look, I'm writing really good notes for you. I'm so sorry you're going through this. You've given me ideas for my son who's the same age. So I want to say some of the workers I think are really doing everything they can to help my case.
Yeah.
It's just CPS has so much power. They can give him back before my next court date if they want to, but they can also take it away. It's crazy how much power they have without any proof or due process, and what they'll lie about to get an order to remove. And oh, sign this, you're like hysterical, and you know, something to release or whatever. It's just it's like, I feel like when you become a parent, like, well, the hospital's not going to do it because some hospitals are not okay. He was born at Cedars. That's a very nice hospital, but you know, hospitals.
Wow.
Yeah. Any other place like where he was taken from, you know, they're not going to be like, hey, you had a kid, you know, everything you need to know about. I just feel like as a parent, like anytime I hear about, you know, friends becoming parents or whatever, I'm like, hey, I never want this to happen to you, but should this, you know, you don't know how to handle it because you don't know that, you don't think it could ever happen to you, and it can happen for any number of reasons. You know, so if I could go back, I would have handled things differently. I would have just walked out, went to another freaking hospital that would treat him, but I didn't know I could do that. Even though they would try to physically stop me, like when I wanted to take my meds the first time and they weren't listening to me saying, hey, I got to do this, and they tried to stop me, I didn't realize that I could be like, F you, we're leaving. You know what I mean? Like you'll give up your rights not knowing them.
Right. It's crazy. So do you have a relationship with the foster parents now where he is?
We've started to gain a little bit better rapport. There was some discord initially, like when they took him, I made a dentist appointment because I said he lost a crown, and they never took him to that dental appointment. His other tooth ended up rotting out, and I saw him at a visit one day with a bloody mouth, and I'm like, what the F happened? He's 3. Kids don't usually lose their teeth till about 4, 5, 6. So he prematurely, you know, one of his teeth rotted out prematurely. And then at a court date, they try to blame it on me. I'm like, you've had him this long. He had a facial tooth injury. I made an appointment. Y'all didn't take him. That's on you. So the foster mom, and I realized it's, you know, there's a process for her to do anything. So I wasn't like necessarily taking that out on her. She would just interpret it that way. And until I realized how proficient her caseworker is and how great she is, there was a lot of, like I said, there's a major language barrier.
Right.
So I know a little Spanish, but I, you know, brushed up on my Spanish. And like our liaison, she's great. So like with the therapy now, because his therapy is kind of combined with my visits now, you know, I'll say things in English and Spanish. And I really did. I'm like, hey, if you can teach him Spanish, do it, because they learn so much quicker when they're younger. So I don't mind that her and her husband only speak Spanish. I'm like, teach him.
Yeah.
You know, so because he'd be watching YouTube. He was watching, for whatever reason, he loved to watch alphabet videos in Russian and Arabic. So we would joke and we would call him baby espionage.
Wow, that's funny.
So I'm like, yeah, if he's into language, like teach him this other language, you know?
So any other significant things? I mean, you're basically waiting to just get him back now.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. What's so frustrating is they tried to force me to sign a case plan. I said no. And I completed all that was asked of me, or things that were accused have been investigated and unfounded. That return date was January. That has come and gone. And I'm like, okay, where's the new return date? I don't know what I can do to enforce that. But I feel like how our last like parent conference meeting, whatever, you have those about once a month or so, I feel like it went really well. And I don't trust them, like trust them. But there were phrases thrown around like, okay, well, because you can't do X amount of in and outs or X amount of overnights within, you know, this time between your next court date. If everything checks out, you know, I may just, this is the reunification worker, I may just say, hey, give them back early. So, you know, it's crazy that the caseworkers can take or give back without a judge's approval. Like, the caseworkers actually have more power than the judge. The judge just, you know, officiates certain things. So it is possible I could get them back before September. It is possible they'll come up with some BS not. I'm just waiting. I mean, I don't have anything to hide. I didn't have anything to hide in the first place, but I'm being extra cautious because, you know, I don't. And then when you get them back, they're still on your ass for 6 months.
Yes.
So I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna just stay in the area with family until our case is closed, and then we're gonna go back to LA, very likely.
Have you gone to mediation or anything like that?
I was not offered mediation. I've gone to parenting classes. They have removed from my case the drug accusations, because they have about 20, no, over 20, not, okay, I want to say about 25 clean random tests. So the reunification worker's like, okay, I guess we'll stop accusing you of drug addiction. So that was nice, because there were, I guess the one of the ladies was just really adamant about that. The same one that was adamant about the psych evals was very adamant about, you know, drugs. And when they said, well, look, we've tested her a million times. The couple times this was in her system, it turns out she's prescribed those things. So I guess we can't accuse her of that anymore. So that was officially taken out of the report for the last court date, and I haven't been asked to test since. Now, like I said, I'm not worried about it. They could come knock on my door right now, and I could test, and I'll be fine. You know, but I feel like that's another step closer. That's no longer wasting people's time with that accusation. You know.
So, when I went to mediation, they told me that I was going to get my kids back. And they went through this whole process. Sounds very similar to what you've been told or what you're going through. And I'm going to get my kids back, and they're going to start doing unsupervised, and then overnight, and then weekends, and then I'm going to get them back. And it was all going to be done within a 3 to 5 week time frame. So super fast. And I was like, awesome, all for it. And the only reason that they told me that they needed to do that type of process was so that it didn't put more trauma on the kids by just giving them back. I know, so stupid. They could take them that fast.
Right. That's not traumatic. That's fine.
But they won't give them back that fast.
Right.
So whatever. So after
you gotta phase mommy back into your life.
Yeah. And then they had me sign a paper. It literally was like, it had like just a couple things, codes, you know, and then they're like, okay, go ahead and sign that you agree to everything that we discussed. And I was like, sure. And there's no attorneys allowed in there. It's just me, the mediator, and the social worker. And which, by the way, I had several social workers on my case. And when I say several, I don't mean all at one time. I mean, I would have one, and then that one would either get sick, one got in a car accident, like all these weird things. Whenever a new one would come in, I would have to basically restart everything over.
Yes,
it didn't matter.
They don't talk to each other. They don't read. They don't do their job.
And they tell you, like, well, I don't know you. I don't care what my paperwork says. I don't care that there's a whole book in front of me about how much progress you've made. I need to see it all for myself. And you have to start everything all over again. But after mediation, I had to go and meet in front of the judge, you know, with all the attorneys and everything. And these were his words. Did you understand everything that was said to you in mediation? Yes. Were you forced to sign anything or to agree to anything? No. Did you, was everything, you know, said clearly, blah, 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 blah. Nothing that we discussed was ever brought up. It was
right. See, and I was never asked those kind of questions by the judge.
Well, I was informed later, and I'll tell you why, but so anyways, I signed the paper. The judge says, okay, have a great day. A week passes, nothing. Don't hear from anybody. Nobody, nothing. I call my attorney. What's going on? No answer, no callback, nothing. Messaging, emailing. What F is going on? call the social worker. You need to talk to your attorney. Don't call us. I'm like, I've been calling. Well, figure it out, because, you know, that's not our job to tell you what's going on. Getting so agitated. So I start calling other attorneys, and I'm like, I need to hire an attorney. Can somebody just tell me what the hell is going on?
Right.
Now we're getting into 2 months have gone by. Nothing has changed. I'm still having supervised visits, and I'm at this point supposed to have already had my kids back, case closed, hands washed, done. Come October, I finally meet an attorney who takes my case, and he looks at my papers, and I explained to him everything I just said. He tells me that they had me sign away my parental rights. I agreed to terminate my parental rights.
Under duress.
Being told I was going to have my kids back.
That's BS.
Yeah.
They would try to separate me or my family or whatever. And, you know, like, they like to control the narrative. So they'll be like, no recording. And I started coming up, I would rig up mics, cameras, all kinds of stuff. Because when I realized after the deposition that what they say goes, evidence doesn't matter, I'm like, F this. Because I'm like, when I get him back, I'm going to sue the freaking county. Like, this is BS. This is not right. You know, I could murder you. Not that I will, but let's just say I murder you. I'm going to get I could murder you, admit it. I could be caught red-handed. I still will get the right to see a jury, and I will have to be proven that I murdered you. That is a major, major crime, major decision, you know, a life taken, lost, changed. They can change or lose, worst case scenario, a child's life with no fucking proof.
Yep.
You get more rights as a criminal who murdered somebody, admitted it, caught red-handed, than you do as a parent that isn't rich. It's disgusting.
Yes.
And people just don't know. People don't freaking know.
Right.
Not that I would murder you. You're good.
I know.
I'm not that type. You're safe. You're safe.
No, but I understand what you're saying, and sometimes you have to use those extreme examples to get your point across, and I get it, and you're right. There's no words to explain.
Oh, and I could plead insanity in your murder, by the way, and then, you know, get off a little bit. If you're, you know, if anything psychologically happens to you during the duration of your child's removal and placement, oh, that's even worse.
Yep.
So say you're struggling to keep it together, you're depressed, which is completely normal. Oh, you can't say shit. You know how many parents off themselves because they, you know what I mean? And I'm not threatening or making light of, I'm just saying, like, you're literally between a rock and a hard place until you get them back. And you don't know what's happening. Like how you said, the way under duress, you were forced to sign something, you didn't understand it. And, you know, you could sign something.
No, see, I understood what I was being told.
What you're being told, but what you were being told and what you were signing, which was probably worded very confusingly, were not the same thing.
Absolutely.
That's not okay.
No.
That would, if you know, like if there was an actual fair trial on it, that, you know, that would be a, what do you call that? When the prosecutor screws up so bad that they have to throw it out and start all over. I can't remember what that is.
Admissible?
Yeah, mistrial or something like that.
Yeah.
Something close. Yeah, they've got to throw it out and get their whole story together and to re-prosecute you again. You'd get a whole new trial because of some trivial stuff like that, which makes all the difference in this case for you and your child's life. It is disgusting how much power they have. Yeah. And the way they're trained. Oh my gosh. I'm sure you're a part of all the advocacy groups. Their training manuals get passed around. It's gross. Ways that they can intimidate or make you waive your due process or waive your rights. And like the way you just explained how that happens all the time. Yeah. All the time. And you're stressed out. Even hold on. Okay, sorry. I thought I was plugged in. I may have to check that. Even if, you know, you take the time to read it, your brain can't problem solve and have major anxiety at the same time and make good decisions. And they know that, and they weaponize that. Yep.
So let me ask you, if you could tell, I feel like you've said a lot of things, and I'm glad, but just maybe there's one more. If you could tell somebody who's watching anything, whether they've gone through this, going through it, or not? What would you say?
Okay, I have two things.
Yep.
If you're getting calls or threatened by CPS who is not in your life yet, has not removed your child, if they show up on your door, tell them very nicely, fuck off, and to come back with a warrant. I don't care how cool they are, how much they try to convince you, smooth, bullshit, they're slimy. Oh, let's just, just talk to me and then we can get this out of the way. Do not trust them. It's like a vampire. They can't come in and suck the life out of you unless you open up your life to them. Do not. I don't care if they show up with police. You need to see a real fucking court order before you open your door. Now, if you're like everyone else, myself included, who's like, okay, yeah, I have nothing to hide. Let's talk about this. Don't sign anything. Do not sign anything. I don't care how much they try to word it. She gave you an example of how she signed and it screwed her. I gave you an example of how I didn't sign and it, still kind of screwed me. But when you sign, you don't know what it is. If you truly believe, and I know no one's perfect, but if you truly believe you are innocent, demand that trial. Even if it's a court appointed, which I've had to deal with myself, make them do their effing job. I had a list of what I needed my attorney to do. She didn't read it, but don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to tell the judge you don't understand. Keep your cool as much as possible. People who you trust who won't judge you, go to them. Don't suffer in silence and get depressed. And it can get really bad. But just know that you're not a terrible person, even if you did make mistakes. If you love your kid, want them back, want them to be in your life, keep fighting no matter how hard it is. And there's a lot of really great support groups on here. So don't feel, I know it's hard to say, don't feel bad. Of course you're going to feel bad, but realize you're not alone. It can happen to anybody. And if anyone's watching and you're going through any phase of this, I am so sorry. And be strong. Your kids love you. And I hope you get them back soon.
Yes.
I think that's about it.
Yeah. Well, I say this to most people, but I want to know what happens. I want to know when you get him back. I want to, I want an update. And
I think we're going to hire a Bruno Mars impersonator.
Yeah?
He loves Bruno.
Oh.
I tried to get one for his birthday, but they're like, no. Like I was going to some type of secret escape thing.
Yeah.
Like, no other people. So I'm going to hire one for his when he comes home. I already made a homecoming banner and everything.
Yay. I like all your banners. Tracy, let's keep in touch for real. I really enjoyed talking to you. I am grateful that you were so patient with me today and that you took time out of your day and shared your story. And, I can't wait for you to get your baby back.
Thank you. And to anyone who's watching, the same to you guys. I can't wait for you guys to get your kids back. Keep fighting, and you're the best.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
You too, honey.